Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive. It's the first Wednesday of the month. That means it is time for another Archival GMing video. This month and the next couple months, I'm going to be doing a series of videos on world building. I'm going to be focusing on the steps I go through whenever I build a world. And I'm going to be splitting these videos into two segments. The first segment is going to be talking about worlds I have built in the past. The second segment, I'm going to be going through the topic of this month's video relating to building a completely new world from the ground up. Going into my thought processes, how I think and plan through these steps. This month, the topic is theming. This is probably the most important step, because every great game world that people remember, Dark Sun, Spelljammer, Shadowrun, Cyberpunk 2020, all of those, it is the theme of the world that holds it up. So, with that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy as I talk about theming in world building. When you start building a house, the first thing you do is you clear the land. And that is what theming is. You see, how you clear the land determines what direction you're going to have the windows facing, where you're going to lay the foundation even, where you're going to have the doors face, how people come in and approach the house. All those details. And that's really how you have to look at theming. It is the section that determines how everything is built. Every game world has a theme of some sort. Forgotten Realms, classic setting, has the theming of the importance of mortals in a world where the divine can just come down and pick you up and do stuff with you. How man relates to these gods that can literally actively change your fate. You have the classic cyberpunk theming of Cyberpunk 2020. You've got the theme for Shadowrun of cyberpunk with magic. Those might not seem like major themes, but they are. But at the same time, worlds can have very focused themes or very overarching themes. You know, the theme for Spelljammer was Dungeons and Dragons in space. The theme for Dark Sun was a blasted land caused by environmentally unfriendly magic. But when you're building your own world, how do you come up with your own themes? I've built worlds on some interesting themes. The first world I ever built, I was about 12 or 13 when I started working on this. I probably didn't have the best ideas at the time, but they were still cool. I cannot really remember the name of my first world. I wasn't very good at naming back then. But I do remember its theme. Floating islands. Like, literally, islands in the sky. The whole world. There was no bottom layer. It was just islands floating around. And you went between them. You know, while other games you would go between continents over the ocean, here you'd fly between islands in the sky. So airships and Rings of feather falling were big things, as were rings of levitation. Common magic items, in fact. But that's a great example of theming and how it plays out right there. That necessitated things like airships, some magical items that were on other worlds rarer, on this world being a lot more common. That was a simple example of theming. Of course, I did other stupid stuff like there were winged versions of every one of the races. Yeah. Like I said, I was about 12 or 13 when I was developing this world. It wasn't the best, but I still remember it. Now, one of the most recent worlds I've built was built along the principle of everything you know is wrong. This world was built because I had some players in my group who had this tendency to use meta-knowledge. Oh, an elf with black skin, white hair, that's a drow, they're evil, type thing. And so, that was what the principle of the world was. If you knew something, it was wrong. It had a secondary theme in it of fate and destiny matter. And really, that was more of the main theme, while the everything you know is wrong was the guiding theme. And I made house rules to this. This was for a Pathfinder setting. And I made a number of house rules that would focus on and encourage the secondary theme, while the primary theme, the everything you know is wrong, was generally handled by, literally, I redid all the races to some extent. I did things like the dragons. You could not tell what a dragon was by its scale color. In fact, I was perfectly willing to flip-flop breath weapons and resistances around. Like, the players could run into a dragon that had black scales, was resistant to acid, but breathed lightning. Or they could run into a dragon that breathed fire, had blue scales, and was resistant to ice. Because everything you know is wrong. And everything in this world was built around the express idea that you could not predict something based on out-of-game knowledge. You could not pick up a book and go, well, I'm fighting this, so this is the case, and this is the case, and this is the case. It's like, no. Yes, you're fighting that. But you know what? It might look like that, but it's not really. Now, of course, I did other things that I'll talk about in the later videos in this series. But now, let's take a look at how you start building the theming of a world. Because at this point, it's time to clear some land, because we've got a new world to build. When you build a world, you have to first start with your central theme. This is clearing the land. And this central theme is going to be on where everything else is built. So, this central theme is important. How I like to come up with my central theme is with an image. In this case, the image is a castle. Oh, a city. Walls around it. Dotted around it are actually thick-walled farms, as in farms with walls as thick as city walls. Rising from the city are its spires of its main keep. And all around it is the dark, foreboding green of the forest. And every time they don't let it go too long, that they don't clear away the forest, it comes encroaching back in a few days. Because the forest, nature, wild, wants to take back the city. And there we have our theme. Civilization versus the wild. Where the wild is a dynamic, vital, almost sentient force. It has its desire. It wants to take these cities back. But civilization fights back against it. It creates the thick walls that keep it away. Has people go out with pitch and tar to burn the land around the walls to clear paths. All that. And that is our central theme. That is our cleared land. Now comes the part where we lay the foundation. And this is where we come up with the lesser themes that are going to dominate this world. One theme that, on the surface, seems like a good theme is duality. You know, civilization versus wild. Hey, that's dualistic, right? No, let's not go there. That's, first off, too obvious. But also, it doesn't really allow for much. Because this theme has to also inform what races are on the world. Because selecting your races is part of your theming. Because you want the races you pick to be supporting your theming. Or you want to adjust your theming to support the races you want on the world. So, let's start with that. What races do we want on the world? Obviously, we want humans. And elves make a great counter to humans with their longevity and their closeness to nature. So that supports very much the first theme. But we also want dwarves. Why? Because everyone loves dwarves. More or less. So, you know, you have to look at it like this. You have humans in a city, elves in the wild, dwarves in their mountains? Or is it dwarves are the ones who taught the humans how to build the walls? We don't quite know yet. That's going to come in later. That's going to come in with history of the world. But we know we want these three. Do we want any of the other races? Let's, for now, say no. Right now, we're just going to go with the big three. Human, elf, dwarf. Gee, a triune entity. Triune of things. So, we're actually going to use the concept of threes in this world. But not the way you think. Because, yes, we have threes in terms of dwarf. And we can also have two, duality. So, how do you look at that? Unless we really want to look at it. Threes. Humans are short-lived. Elves are the longest-lived of the three. Dwarves are in the middle. So, threes is perhaps, but no. Let's make our theme about this secondary theme about extremes. And that's what we will go with. That the world is also about the extremes. The human city is the middle ground. The dwarves and their stone fortresses in the mountains are the extreme of avoidance of the conflict. Elves are the extreme of succumbing in the fact that they would live in places that are worked into the living trees, in tune with the wild around them. So, if we want to allow other races in, we'll probably be able to work them in with that. That they're somehow work into the extremes in some manner. This also means that we're not going to have single deities. Because a single deity has to have the opposite end. And it doesn't really work. So when we come into the theming, when we come into the pantheon construction later on, we're not going to have our deities be individual entities. They're going to be group deities with extremes represented somehow. So here is our ultimate theming for this world. It is a world of civilization versus the wild. It is a world where the extremes have the power as well as those things right in the middle of them. Where everything is on a spectrum, and that spectrum is visible, is present. Next month, I will actually begin talking about pantheon construction. So until then, and until my next normal weekly videos, I just want you all to remember to have fun and keep gaming.